hall was silent, save for the distant echo of dripping water and the soft crackle of torches burning along the walls. Shadows stretched long and thin across the polished wooden floor, the golden crest of the chrysanthemum throne gleaming faintly beneath the dim light. At the far end of the room, the Emperor of Japan sat motionless, his face hidden behind an ornate screen of silk and lacquer. His voice, when it finally broke the silence, was calm yet chillingly absolute. "Remove him," the Emperor commanded. 2 guards moved swiftly, dragging away the trembling nobleman who had moments ago dared to speak against a new decree that would plunge an entire province into chaos. The courtiers watching the scene bowed deeply, none daring to look up, none daring to question. But among them, a single figure stood perfectly still, hidden in plain sight. His expression was unreadable, his robes unremarkable, his presence so carefully measured that no one noticed him. And that was the point, because the words that had just left the Emperor's mouth were not truly his own. They had been planted, whispered into his ear by those who ruled from the shadows. A clan of spies so skilled and secretive that even this Emperor himself did not know he was their pawn. This was no mere court intrigue. This was covert control of an empire, the hidden hand that decided which warlords rose and which fell, which battles were fought, and which histories were written. Before we uncover how this shadow clan shaped the very destiny of Japan, I want to hear from you. Where are you watching from? And what time is it right now? Drop it in the comments below. And while you're at it, smash that like button, share this story with your fellow history lovers, and hit subscribe, because the next few minutes will reveal a story of spies and betrayal unlike anything you've ever heard before. Centuries before the word ninja would strike fear into the hearts of Japan's enemies, before their legends filled scrolls and theater plays, there existed something even more terrifying. A network of spies so deeply embedded in the political structure of feudal Japan that their influence was both invisible and undeniable. They were known only by whispers as the hidden blades of heaven, a name that suggested divine purpose, though their motives were anything but holy. The hidden blades were not born from nobility. They came from the shadows, from villages caught between endless wars fought by powerful daimyo, regional warlords who treated the peasants as pawns in their endless quest for dominance. These humble farmers, hunters, and outcasts learned early on that they could not survive by strength of arms alone. They needed cunning. They needed deception. And so, they began to craft an art of warfare unlike anything seen before. Where samurai fought honorably in the open, the hidden blades struck silently, unseen and unknown. They studied the terrain, the movement of armies, and the secret desires of those who held power. Over time, their techniques evolved into a complex discipline of espionage and psychological manipulation. Their rise was slow, like a shadow creeping at dusk. At first, they were merely hired informants, passing messages between rival warlords for coin. But as they perfected their craft, they became something far more dangerous, the unseen power behind thrones. They didn't just report on events, they created them. Imagine 2 rival daimyo preparing for battle. One morning, a messenger arrives bearing a royal decree from the emperor himself, ordering one lord to retreat and the other to advance. The first lord obeys, only to discover too late that the decree was forged by the hidden blades to sow chaos. Entire wars were won or lost without a single sword being drawn, all because of a few carefully placed lies. The most terrifying part? No one knew who these spies truly were. They blended seamlessly into society, disguising themselves as monks, merchants, wandering performers, even servants in noble households. You could sit beside a member of the Hidden Blades and never suspect a thing until the moment their deception destroyed you. In one infamous tale, a rising warlord named Takemura believed he was about to unify 2 provinces under his rule through marriage alliances. On the night of the wedding, his bride vanished, spirited away by a spy who had posed as her maid for years. The next morning, a rival lord received a letter claiming Takemura had betrayed the emperor, signed with his personal seal. By nightfall, Takemura's armies were surrounded, and his name was erased from history. The Hidden Blades didn't merely survive war, they thrived on it. Every conflict was an opportunity, every death a chance to tighten their grip on the fragile balance of power. But why would they do this? What was their ultimate goal? Some believed they sought only to protect their villages by keeping the great warlords distracted and divided. Others claimed they were fanatics serving a vision of divine order, manipulating events to create a stable empire under a single ruler of their choosing. Whatever their motives, their methods were always the same: secrecy, precision, and ruthlessness. As their influence spread, whispers began to reach even the imperial court. The emperor's advisors dismissed these rumors as folktales, believing no mere peasants could wield such power. Yet strange things began to happen. Decisions supposedly made by the emperor were later revealed to benefit certain daimyo suspiciously aligned with the hidden blades. Imperial messengers vanished on critical journeys. Scrolls bearing royal decrees were discovered to be counterfeits. One evening, a trusted court official confided to his closest ally, "The throne is no longer ours. It listens to voices we cannot hear and obeys hands we cannot see." He was dead by morning. The hidden blades understood something that the samurai and warlords never did. Information was the true weapon of power. A single whisper could do what 1,000 swords could not. And they wielded this weapon with terrifying skill. By the dawn of the 10th century, their reach extended across the land. Entire families served as their agents for generations, their loyalty bound by oaths and fear. Children were trained from birth to blend into any environment, to become invisible in plain sight. They mastered the art of disguise, learning to mimic the mannerisms of monks, peasants, nobles, and even enemies. Their training was brutal. A recruit might be ordered to live in a hostile village for a year without revealing their identity, surviving solely through deception. Those who failed were never seen again. Those who succeeded became part of a machine so secretive that even its members rarely knew the true identity of their leaders. At the top of this shadow empire was a figure known only as the Silent Master. Some claimed the Silent Master was a woman, others that the title passed between individuals to maintain the illusion of immortality. Whoever they were, their word was law. The Silent Master's greatest triumph came during the succession crisis of Emperor Kazan. Two powerful clans vied for control of the throne, threatening to plunge Japan into a devastating civil war. While armies prepared to clash, the hidden blades moved unseen. They assassinated a key general in his sleep, replaced imperial messages with forgeries, and spread false rumors of betrayal. By the time the armies met on the battlefield, both sides were convinced the other had already surrendered. The resulting chaos allowed the Silent Master, as chosen candidate, to seize power without a single battle being fought. From that day forward, the throne itself was theirs to manipulate. Emperors came and went, but the hidden blades endured, always watching, always pulling strings from behind the curtain of history. By the end of this chapter, one truth becomes clear. The story of Japan's rise to power was never written by warriors or nobles alone. It was written in the shadows, by spies who shaped the destiny of an empire without ever revealing their names. And as we move deeper into this tale, the question remains, how long can any ruler sit on a throne, knowing that unseen hands hold the true power behind it? The mountains of Iga and Koga were shrouded in mist, their peaks hidden behind drifting veils of white. Deep within these rugged landscapes, villages clung to life in isolation, surrounded by towering forests and treacherous paths. It was here, far from the glittering courts of Kyoto and the blood-soaked battlefields of the daimyo, that a new kind of warrior was born, one who would fight not with honor and steel in the open, but with shadows, whispers, and deception. Centuries earlier, Japan was fractured into countless territories, each ruled by ambitious warlords whose rivalries left the land in constant turmoil. Armies clashed, villages burned, and peasants were caught between these titanic struggles, powerless to defend themselves. The samurai, bound by their rigid codes of honor, served only their masters, caring little for the common folk. For those without swords or status, survival meant finding another way. In the hidden villages of the Iga and Koga provinces, survival demanded cunning. These people, farmers, hunters, monks, cast out from temples, and even disgraced samurai, began to share their knowledge of stealth, misdirection, and strategy. Over generations, Their practices evolved into a highly organized system of espionage and covert warfare. They were not yet called ninja, but their craft was unmistakable, the art of remaining unseen while shaping the course of history. They trained their senses to detect danger before it appeared, practiced moving silently across rooftops and forest floors, and learned to read human behavior as easily as a scroll. Disguise became second nature. A warrior who was a farmer by day could vanish into the night as a spy, infiltrating enemy camps by posing as a wandering monk or traveling merchant. The origins of these clans were rooted in necessity. A small village might hire one of these covert agents to spy on a rival village as harvest plans, ensuring survival during a harsh winter. But as regional warlords began to notice the effectiveness of these techniques, they sought to exploit this hidden skill for their own ambitions. Soon, the people of Iga and Koga were no longer merely defending their homes. They were being drawn into the great game of power and politics. The Hidden Blades of Heaven, as some came to call them, didn't start as a single unified organization. At first, they were scattered groups with local leaders. However, centuries of bloodshed forged unity through necessity. Powerful warlords would pay handsomely for information, but payment came with risk. Spies who served one master might be hunted by another. Over time, alliances formed among the villages, creating networks of intelligence that could span entire regions. The Iga and Koga provinces became the beating heart of this growing spy empire. Their mountains offered perfect natural fortresses, with winding paths that could be easily defended or used to disappear from pursuing enemies. Outsiders rarely dared to enter, for those who did often never returned. In these secluded strongholds, training schools were established where children were taught the ways of secrecy from an early age. Lessons were brutal and unforgiving. A young recruit might be tasked with memorizing the habits of every villager in a neighboring settlement, or sneaking into a heavily guarded compound to retrieve a single scrap of paper. Failure meant public humiliation, or worse, expulsion, which in this world often meant death. The teachings covered everything: unarmed combat, silent movement, use of hidden weapons like shuriken and blowguns, and perhaps most importantly, the manipulation of human emotions. Spies were instructed to exploit greed, fear, and ambition, turning enemies into unwitting pawns. One secret technique involved forging imperial documents so convincingly that even seasoned officials could not tell the difference. These counterfeit decrees could spark wars, shift alliances, or convince entire armies to stand down without a fight. It was through this skill that the Hidden Blades began to reshape the balance of power in Japan, one forged scroll at a time. The rise of these clans is best illustrated by one of their earliest recorded missions, an operation that would cement their reputation among the ruling elite. A powerful warlord, Lord Hidetaka, sought to conquer neighboring territories to expand his domain. However, his enemies had united against him, forming an alliance too strong for direct confrontation. The Hidden Blades were hired not to fight, but to fracture this alliance from within. The plan was meticulous. Agents posing as merchants infiltrated each rival lord's court, bringing gifts, spreading rumors, and carefully planting doubts. One night, a forged letter was discovered in the camp of a key ally, seemingly proving he had secretly betrayed the coalition to side with Hidetaka. Enraged, the other lords turned on him, their alliance crumbling into chaos. When the dust settled, Hidetaka's enemies were too busy fighting among themselves to resist his advance. He claimed victory without ever risking open battle. None of the surviving lords ever realized they had been manipulated by invisible hands. The Hidden Blades, however, were watching from the shadows, their coffers filled with gold and their reputations soaring. But this success came at a cost. The more they intervened in the affairs of powerful rulers, the more dangerous their existence became. Some daimyo began to fear the clans, recognizing that anyone with such mastery of deception could easily turn against them. To protect themselves, the Hidden Blades adopted a strict hierarchy and code of secrecy. At the top sat a council of elders, known only to a select few. Below them were the masters who trained and directed the agents, and beneath them, countless operatives scattered across the land. Even within the organization, members used false identities to ensure that no one could betray the whole network if captured. Their ultimate weapon was loyalty enforced through fear and manipulation. Families were bound to service for generations, with threats of exile or execution ensuring obedience. Those who dared to leave the clan often vanished mysteriously, their disappearance serving as a warning to others. As their influence grew, their techniques evolved beyond simple espionage. The hidden blades became masters of psychological warfare, using symbols, omens, and staged miracles to control the beliefs of both peasants and nobles. In one remarkable case, they orchestrated a fake prophecy to convince a rival warlord to abandon his campaign. A mysterious monk appeared in the warlord's camp, predicting doom if he continued his march. That same night, the warlord's food stores were set ablaze by hidden agents, fulfilling the monk's warning. Terrified, the warlord retreated, believing the gods themselves had turned against him. This was the genius of the hidden blades. They didn't just strike at bodies, they struck at minds, bending reality to their will. But as they wove their web of influence, a question began to stir among those few who dared to whisper about their existence. Were the hidden blades merely tools of powerful lords, or had they become the true masters of Japan's destiny? Even within the imperial court, strange patterns emerged. Decisions that should have strengthened the emperor's position instead seemed to weaken him, while certain regional powers inexplicably rose to prominence. A few brave officials began to suspect that a hidden force was guiding these events. One court historian wrote in his private journal, "The records of our time will be a lie. The scrolls may bear the emperor's seal, but the hand that writes them belongs to another. He was found dead 2 days later, his journal burned to ash." This growing shadow frightened even the most hardened warlords. Some attempted to destroy the hidden blades, sending armies into the mountains of Iga and Koga. Few returned. Those who survived spoke of invisible enemies, traps that sprung from nowhere, and battles fought entirely in darkness. By this point, the hidden blades were no longer just a collection of spy clans. They had become a nation within a nation, a hidden empire with its own laws, leaders, and ambitions. And while their existence remained officially denied, their influence was felt everywhere, in the halls of power, on the battlefields, and even in the chambers of the emperor himself. If you had been alive during this time, watching as secret messages and unseen agents shaped the fate of entire kingdoms, what would you have done? Would you trust the rulers you saw, or would you begin to question everything you believed about who truly held power? Because in the shadows of ancient Japan, the line between loyalty and betrayal was blurred beyond recognition, and the hidden blades were the ones drawing that line. By the 12th century, the hidden blades of heaven were no longer mere mercenaries working for ambitious warlords. They had evolved into masters of manipulation, weaving their schemes so deeply into Japan's political fabric that emperors, shoguns, and daimyo became puppets dancing on invisible strings. The mountains of Iga and Koga were their fortresses, but their true battlefield was the human mind. They no longer relied solely on espionage and assassination. Their greatest victories came from shaping perceptions, turning allies into enemies, and rewriting history before it was even recorded. Every move they made was deliberate, every rumor they spread part of a larger design. While the samurai fought in open combat, swords gleaming under the sun, the hidden blades fought a war of shadows, striking without ever being seen. By now, they had reached the point where even the truth itself was a weapon, and they wielded it mercilessly. By now, the lies were so thick, even the truth sounded like deception. The first sign of their growing dominance came during a critical moment in Japan's history. A war of succession between two imperial bloodlines, the Minamoto and the Taira. Both clans sought to control the throne, and the land was teetering on the edge of total chaos. The hidden blades saw this conflict as an opportunity, not just to profit, but to determine who would rule. They embedded agents on both sides, feeding carefully tailored information to generals and advisors. False intelligence about troop movements sent armies marching into ambushes, while fabricated letters planted suspicion between allies. One particularly brilliant maneuver involved the forging of a marriage alliance document. A fake scroll slipped into the hands of a Taira general, suggesting that one of his closest allies had promised his daughter to a rival lord in secret. Outraged by the perceived betrayal, the general abandoned the battlefield mid-campaign, leaving his forces in disarray. The Minamoto seized the opportunity, crushing their enemies, unaware that their victory had been engineered by invisible hands. But here was the terrifying truth. The hidden blades did not favor either side. Their goal was balance, chaos finely tuned to ensure that no single ruler ever grew powerful enough to challenge them. When one faction became too strong, they quietly shifted their support to the other. Their mastery of psychological warfare reached new heights during this period. They understood that fear was far more powerful than any sword. For example, one of their most infamous tactics involved spreading carefully crafted omens. In the midst of a campaign, mysterious symbols would appear carved into trees outside a daimyo's camp, or strange fires would burn in the distance at night. These signs were accompanied by whispered rumors, always delivered by seemingly innocent bystanders, that the gods themselves had cursed the daimyo's cause. Superstitious warriors, already exhausted by war, would begin to doubt their leaders. Morale would crumble, sometimes collapsing entire armies without a single blade being drawn. There was even a case where a hidden blade disguised as a wandering monk convinced a powerful lord to abandon his campaign entirely. That very night, agents set fire to the lord's granaries, making it appear that divine wrath had struck. The terrified daimyo fled, leaving his territory undefended and ripe for manipulation. It was through such tactics that the hidden blades began to rule without ever sitting on a throne. But their growing influence did not go entirely unnoticed. A few shoguns began to suspect that their failures were not the result of fate or incompetence, but of deliberate sabotage. One shogun, Lord Takayoshi, came dangerously close to exposing them. Through tireless investigation, he traced a series of forged documents and disappearances back to a village in the mountains of Iga. Determined to root out the threat, he dispatched a full battalion to capture the suspects. The result was catastrophic. As the soldiers advanced through the mountain passes, they were ambushed by an enemy they could not see. Traps triggered without warning, pits concealed beneath leaves, boulders released from hidden mechanisms, arrows fired from nowhere. Entire squads vanished into the mist, their screams echoing briefly before being swallowed by silence. When a handful of survivors staggered back to Takayoshi's camp, they spoke of fighting ghosts, enemies who struck and vanished, leaving no trace. In his rage and fear, Takayoshi declared that the Iga region was cursed, forbidding anyone to enter it again. The hidden blades had turned an attempted purge into a warning. From that day forward, few dared to openly challenge them. Inside their secretive organization, the Silent Master reigned supreme. No one knew their true identity. Some claimed the Silent Master was a single individual who had lived for generations through trickery and disguise. Others believed the title was passed between leaders, creating the illusion of immortality. Under this mysterious figure's guidance, the Hidden Blades perfected a system of control that extended into every corner of Japanese society. Merchants, servants, monks, even performers. Anyone could be an agent. Even within their own ranks, operatives rarely knew the full scope of a mission, ensuring that no single member could betray the whole network if captured. This structure allowed the Silent Master to reshape Japan's destiny at will. Perhaps the most shocking demonstration of their power came during the fall of Emperor Go-Toba. The emperor, believing himself divinely ordained, attempted to assert direct control over the shogunate, bypassing the warlords, who traditionally governed in his name. To the public, this appeared as a righteous effort to restore imperial authority. But behind the scenes, the Hidden Blades saw it as a threat to their delicate balance of power. Their response was swift and ruthless. They infiltrated the emperor's closest circle of advisors, planting seeds of paranoia. Key generals received conflicting orders, some real, others forged. Secret alliances were sabotaged through well-placed rumors, and supply lines mysteriously collapsed at critical moments. As tensions mounted, the emperor began to doubt even his most loyal servants. In desperation, he ordered mass executions to root out imagined traitors. This only fueled further unrest, creating a spiral of chaos that the Hidden Blades carefully nurtured. When rebellion finally erupted, the emperor found himself surrounded and powerless. His downfall was recorded by historians as the result of political miscalculation, but the truth, hidden in burned scrolls and vanished witnesses, was that his destruction had been orchestrated entirely by the hidden blades. From the shadows, they had unmade an emperor. By now, their reputation was almost supernatural. Among commoners, they were spoken of in hushed tones, as if uttering their name might summon them. Among nobles, fear bred obedience. Daimyo, who suspected their involvement in a rival, sudden rise, or mysterious death, dared not speak openly, for they knew the same fate could befall them. Even the shogunate itself became dependent on their services, using them to spy on enemies while pretending ignorance of their true power. It was a devil-as bargain. The rulers of Japan relied on the very force that secretly undermined them. Do you think the emperors and shoguns truly believed they were safe under the hidden blade's watch? Or was the end already closing in on them, even as they sat on their thrones? The greatest danger of the hidden blades was not merely their skill, but their ability to rewrite history itself. They controlled not only information in the present, but also how future generations would remember events. By eliminating certain records and forging others, they shaped the narrative to suit their purposes. Victories were attributed to rulers they favored, while rivals were erased from scrolls entirely. In this way, they ensured that even centuries later, their manipulations would remain hidden. The emperors and warlords whose names filled the chronicles were merely actors in a play scripted by unseen hands. And yet, even as they perfected their craft, a storm was brewing. Some within their ranks began to question whether they were truly serving a higher purpose or simply feeding their own lust for control. Whispers of dissent echoed through the mountain villages, though none dared speak openly against the silent master. For the first time, cracks began to appear in the foundation of their shadow empire. By the dawn of the next century, Japan stood on the brink of transformation. Armies clashed openly, but the real battle was still being fought in secret in the corridors of power, in the pages of forged scrolls, and in the minds of rulers who no longer knew which orders were real and which were the work of the hidden blades. And as history would soon reveal, even the greatest masters of deception cannot escape the fate they so carefully weave for others. The cold night air clung to the mountains of Iga like a living thing, the mist swirling through narrow passes as if whispering secrets of the dead. Fires burned in the distance, not the comforting glow of village hearths, but the violent blaze of armies marching under banners of vengeance. For centuries, the hidden blades of heaven had controlled Japan from the shadows, deciding who ruled and who fell, bending emperors and shoguns alike to their will. But now, their enemies were no longer ignorant. The warlords had begun to see through the illusion, and they had come together to wage a final, desperate war against the invisible empire that had haunted them for generations. The attack came under the banner of Oda Nobunaga, a rising daimyo who had begun to unify Japan by force. Nobunaga was unlike the rulers who came before him, ruthless, pragmatic, and utterly fearless. Where others saw spirits and curses, he saw only human deception. He did not fear the hidden blades. He sought to destroy them completely, no matter the cost. In the shadowed halls of a remote mountain fortress, the silent masters sat in contemplation. The flickering light of paper lanterns revealed a figure cloaked in darkness, their face hidden beneath a hood of deep crimson. Before them lay scrolls detailing centuries of operations, assassinations, forgeries, betrayals, the very history of Japan, written not by emperors, but by this unseen hand. A trusted advisor knelt before the silent master, trembling. "Master, Nobunaga's forces approach. Even now, they set fire to our villages. The outer defenses are falling." The silent master's voice was calm, almost serene. "Then let them burn. For every torch they raise, we have a shadow to extinguish it." But beneath the calm words lay a chilling truth. For the first time in centuries, the hidden blades were being forced into a war they could not fully control. Their strength had always been deception and subtlety. Against an enemy like Nobunaga, who struck with open, overwhelming force, their methods faltered. As Nobunaga's armies pressed deeper into Ega, the land itself became a weapon. Hidden traps littered the mountain passes, collapsing bridges, poisoned wells, ambushes that struck from nowhere. Soldiers whispered in terror, believing they were fighting ghosts. But Nobunaga was relentless. He brought overwhelming numbers and scorched earth tactics, burning entire forests to smoke out his elusive foes. Every village that resisted was annihilated, leaving nothing behind but ashes and bones. For weeks, the battle raged in silence and fire. It was not a war of armies, but of illusions versus brute force. The hidden blades struck in the dead of night, assassinating commanders, sowing confusion, and vanishing before dawn. Nobunaga countered with ruthless efficiency, cutting off supply lines and slaughtering entire families to prevent new generations of spies from rising. The war became a nightmare for both sides, a clash between the unseen and the unstoppable. At the height of the conflict, a legend was born. One night, a group of hidden blades infiltrated Nobunaga's main camp. Disguised as his own soldiers, they slipped past guards and nearly reached his command tent. But Nobunaga, anticipating their move, had laid his own trap. As the assassins struck, the tent collapsed around them, and archers rained arrows from hidden positions. It was a symbolic moment. The masters of deception caught in their own web, their centuries-old supremacy broken by a warlord who understood that fear could be conquered by sheer, unrelenting will. As the hidden blades retreated into the mountains, the silent master faced a choice: continue fighting and risk total annihilation, or disappear completely, leaving only rumors and legends behind. In a final act of defiance, they chose secrecy over defeat. In the heart of the Iga stronghold, as Nobunaga's forces closed in, the silent master ordered the destruction of their greatest weapon, their own history. Scrolls containing records of every plot, every manipulation, every name they had controlled or destroyed were gathered in a great hall and set aflame. Flames roared, consuming centuries of truth. The silent master's voice echoed over the inferno. History belongs to the victors. Let them believe they destroyed us. But so long as shadows exist, we will never truly die. As the fire burned, the silent master vanished into the mist, their true fate unknown. Some say they perished in the flames. Others claim they escaped, living on under a new identity, waiting for the day the hidden blades could rise again. When Nobunaga's forces finally stormed the fortress, they found nothing but ruins and ashes. To the outside world, it seemed the Shadow Empire had been utterly destroyed. Official records declared the Iga clans wiped out, their legacy erased from history. But whispers persisted. Strange disappearances continued in the courts of powerful lords. Assassinations occurred that no warrior could explain. And in remote villages, children were still taught the ancient ways of stealth and silence. From these remnants, the legends of the ninja were born, the mythic assassins and spies who would haunt Japanese folklore for centuries. What the world saw as mere stories of masked warriors were, in truth, fragments of a real and terrifying history. The emperors and shoguns believed themselves victorious, believing that they had finally broken free of the shadows that once controlled them. But in reality, the hidden blades had simply faded into myth, their influence hidden yet again. The rise and fall of the hidden blades reveals a chilling truth. Power does not always reside with the visible rulers, the crowned emperors, or the celebrated generals. Often, it belongs to those who remain unseen, shaping events through whispers and lies. And though the mountains of Ega and Koga are quiet now, who can say whether their descendants do not still walk among us, watching, listening, waiting for the moment to strike once more? The silent master's final words were never recorded, but legend claims they spoke this vow as the fortress burned. The world will forget our names, but our shadows will never fade. And with that, the Spies' empire of secrets finally collapsed, leaving a legacy written in betrayal and blood. If this story kept you hooked until the very end, smash that like button. Share this video with someone who loves untold spy stories. And subscribe right now, because the next case we uncover might be even more shocking.